Hello everyone, welcome back. Got an interview today with the CEO of Zapata AI. It's one of the great things about my job is I get to talk to some of these CEOs and some of the people leading these great developments, and it adds a lot to the research. It really means we understand from the horse's mouth exactly what's going on. I've got a great deal of respect for Zapata. I think they're going to be a big company, just not quite sure when yet. They've got fantastic products. They're effectively a quantum computing software company. They develop generative AI to be used in industry, and their customer list is astonishing. We've got Andretti Motor Racing where they're working on a daily basis at the racetrack. We've got BMW where they delivered an optimization solution for their staff worldwide. They're working with DARPA in the US, the defense team. They've just got a contract with Special Forces operations in the US, and that whole thing seems to be going really well. They've got Tech Mahindra, the Indian tech company, Mitsui Bank in Japan. It's looking really good. Revenue's growing quickly. 1.2 million last year. 2 million this quarter, so up 60-70%, and they delivered this quarter's 2 million at 30%, 6% gross margin, so it's fantastic growth. Of course the issue is cash. They haven't got any. That's the problem. When they launched via a SPAC, they had huge numbers of redemptions, left them with virtually no money, so we're looking at enormous dilution going forward, as well as enormous growth and hopefully enormous profits. I'm currently writing an article about them. I'll have that published via my newsletter because they're just a bit too small, well, a lot too small in truth, to put on the Seeking Alpha platform where I normally write these things, but I'm hoping they're going to be the first microcap strong buy in the portfolio. But here's the interview. I really hope you enjoy it, and thanks to Christopher for doing this for me, and I hope it goes well for you. What I'd like to talk about today, if we could, is a little bit about the kind of business side, rather than the technology side of it, the business side of it, the sort of the growth in the pipeline, some idea of some timelines, and sort of some of the future things. I really enjoyed listening to the earnings call yesterday, and there's quite a few. There's some really interesting stuff came out of it, as well as came out of that research note from Cantor Fitzgerald, which I read a couple of days ago. It's great that you've got some coverage of that nature. That's really going to help. And there was a notable bump in the share price, wasn't there? As soon as they
that one and the benchmark one as well. So it's good that we have now two reputable analysts. Matthew as well was on the call yesterday, covering us. So that's really helpful, I think. And I want to obviously work to expand our research coverage out there by engaging with the analysts, and we do have inbound analysts who are quite interested in perhaps talking to us about initiating coverage at the right time. So
yeah, I think that's a really positive thing, isn't it? It really helps. I spoke to the guys at D-Wave a couple of days ago, CEO and CFO, and they were incredibly positive about the relationship with Zapata, and they really see it as a kind of driving point for D-Wave, as well as a driving thing for Zapata. I wonder if you do you want to talk a little bit about that relationship first?
Yeah, it's very complementary. They have not only hardware but the systems on the cloud that can deliver hybrid machine learning and quantum capabilities, and they have a hybrid solver for optimization. And optimization is a big part of what we do. In addition to finding a machine learning generative AI solution for something, we have to optimize that solution as well. So having both of those components, the machine learning, well, three things. If we want to call it a three-legged stool, we have the machine learning capability that we bring software-wise on the classical side, and that was introduced there as well. The GPU-based stuff that they already have as part of their hybrid solution. The quantum aspect of that and the quantum math that we can put behind that solution to enhance it, particularly in areas like drug discovery and some others. I'll be speaking at a conference in Barcelona in about a week and a half, a week from Monday, actually. On how we're using the D-Wave system in the context of the same work that we had done with St. Jude's Hospital and in silico medicine to find actual chemicals that target a cancer cell and are able to knock down the cancerous activity. In vitro, we've been able to do that. We're using now the D-Wave system to do that, as we had done with the gate model system. And the annealing system has some features that are competitive in that the clock cycles for doing annealing are quite fast. So when we're doing machine learning, it's how many iterations of learning you can do that makes it better and better. The more you learn, the better you get, right? So the ability to use the machine for more iterations, the GPU clock cycles are very, very fast. But an annealing superconducting device that can give us quantum distributions can work very quickly to give us more iterations that meets kind of the challenges of coming up to the same speed level that the GPUs are at, right? So quantum systems can be much slower. So ion trap machines, for example, can be 1,000 times slower than the superconducting ones, and the annealing ones within that range to give us those bit speeds are quite fast. So the clock cycles, the clock speeds matter, like megahertz on the classical semiconductor side. So we're quite excited about the possibility. Plus, the qubit numbers that they have are higher for generating these quantum bit streams. So we're quite excited about that. There was a patent that our CTO and I that's now published, was issued on how we can use an annealing system to actually create these distributions and actually measure on two bases. So do what we could do on a gate model machine with an annealing infrastructure as well. So we're able to leverage that IP in this relationship also. So quantum, GPU, classical for the machine learning, plus the optimization routines that we get together with them on really do provide a total solution for some of the industrial types of problems that we have. You not only need lots of suggested things, which is what generative modeling can do, but you need to optimize for the best setup. And we can do both of those things with D-Wave. They're quite excellent on the hardware side of that, and where we have the software side and the client-facing side to be able to bring that model development lifecycle to them. So I think it's very complementary from a sales business development perspective, market approach, and also the compatibility of the two systems that we offer.
One of the things that came out in my discussion with Alan at DUA was the NTT Docomo solution, where they're using an annealing, the D-Wave's annealing machine to do what sounded like at the edge computing to reduce the number of pings going off any individual cell tower. And to be honest, that sounded almost exactly like what you described when you discussed Tech Mahindra last time. It seemed almost a kind of parallel development. You often get this in sort of mathematics, don't you, where two people come up with the same thing at exactly the same time on different parts of the world. I wonder, is that your Tech Mahindra? Is that what you're talking
it's
about?
slightly different in the sense that what they're talking about is the optimization, which is what they're really good at, optimizing the network traffic. And what we're adding to that, in addition, is at the edge predictive maintenance, if you will, predictive fault detection before it happens. So the two together work very complementary. You want to minimize the traffic problems to prevent that. But when you see that even with everything that you've done to mitigate, that an edge hop on that network is experiencing problems, you want to notify ahead of time that there may be a problem happening here. Houston, we have a problem before it happens. And what that does is, having worked at Verizon in network operations, the problem is right now, the way it works in telco is you get there's been a fault, and you get 100 routers are down. Okay, which one was the core of that? You get a network hierarchy information as well. And it's like, well, this is at the center, so maybe that's the problem, but it could be here, it could be here, it could be here, it could be here. So roll 100 trucks, please. And each one is several $1,000s to roll that truck. And you go to all of them because you can't afford to keep down on the network with customers needing to have their networks working, right? This is mission critical. We're talking about millions of dollars a minute sometimes, for these faults. It's very disruptive. So they just roll all the trucks. Now, if we had a predictive, like the yellow flag predictor, here an accident's going to happen on this router, and then it happens, we don't just get the 1,000 things that are down, what nodes are down. We get a prioritized list that tells us that one was warning us first. So now we can actually go for causality of that disruption, we now know where to concentrate on where to roll the truck to. We have some, this one started failing first, then this one, then this one, time series information now to actually make that mitigation step. Not just the diagnosis, but the actual mitigation can be reduced in its scope and therefore save lots of money. You move the needle just a few basis points on the number of times you roll a truck. Over a year at a telco company, that's huge. And the same thing with networks for power management and networked power, energy, all of these kind of things that have these kind of networked systems can use this and so it's very complementary with what D-Wave is doing to prevent the problem from happening. But we can also, when the problem happens, retrospectively understand where it happened first, or where it may have happened first. Does that make sense?
That. Yeah, that really does make sense. When I was reading through the Cantor note, one of the things they spoke quite a lot about is how it kind of almost like seed customers, where you kind of get one customer and it leads to another customer, another customer, another customer, kind of grows the network. And one that they specifically mentioned, which I kind of wasn't aware about, was Andretti to BMW. I don't. I mean, is that are they a BMW customer or a pipeline, or are you just talking to them?
Oh no, we've done a project with them that's published. You can actually see the work that we did with them on manufacturing optimization for basically the system that we developed with them was to manage the scheduling of workers at plants. You want to reduce buffer time with real-time parts availability and do that in an optimized manner. But it's a constrained optimization problem. In other words, it'd be great if you could have every worker work 24/7 and like robots never rest. But there are union rules, and thank heavens there are for the workers, right? But those rules are different in Spain than they may be in Germany, than they may be in South America, than they may be somewhere else. And so where do I get the best optimization across my networks, across my plants, or even in one particular plant, given that what that plant does, the constraints of that, what they're producing. Are they producing an SUV? Are they producing an electric vehicle? These things change. So in these complex configurations, we were able to use generative modeling to generate possible solutions that were better than the average solution that their system was able to come up with. So yeah, so I think that the network effect is that now that we've done a project in automotive with BMW, we're working with Andretti. The point being that we have access, we have credibility in the automotive industry as a whole. So it's not just racing; it's any of these technologies that are developed in racing. Even the rear view mirror came out of the Indy 500 race. I don't know if you're aware of that, but all of these technologies eventually make their way into the OEM area, like BMW, like Toyota, like these. So having that, and they're all participating for a reason in racing, because that's where all the new technology is tested at extreme conditions.
And I think companies like BMW, because I want to talk about these sort of very large companies, because
Yeah.
people scheduling you just mentioned is one thing, but then you've got things like the body shop where they've got to do the spraying, and then you've got parts arriving and parts leaving, and are you finding a sort of pull through into other parts of the business? Is that happening?
Well, yeah. I mean, even in that scheduling of people, you have to consider when the parts are coming in. Doesn't help you to have 5 people on the paint line when the paint hasn't arrived yet at a particular time in the morning, or you're not producing that vehicle at that rate for that market condition for that day. It's variable. So being able to deal with those constrained optimization problems mathematically, yes, it does interact with the other parts of the business, but once you have that mathematical framework, you can do supply chain management, demand change management. We've done an optimization problem with Coca-Cola Bottlers Japan, where we optimized their vending networks, but it's very similar mathematically to what we did with BMW. As a matter of fact, we were able to use some of the routines that we've learned in libraries that we had developed in the Coca-Cola example in developing solutions like the BMW one. So this is very complementary. The more that you do, the more that they're similar. And it's very funny that mathematics that we did in the Andretti situation, when we gave this in a talk with the Mitsui Group, which is, a quarter of the GDP of Japan, in the room at this MIT thing that the Mitsui Group does every year. They had all their researchers doing cutting edge, bleeding edge stuff come to Boston every year, and we were allowed to give a presentation of what we were doing with Andretti for them, and that's how we got the SMTB link up, because they're part of the Mitsui Group, Sumitomo Mitsui Trust Bank. And they saw the race time series data and what we were doing mathematically. And this is a very mathematically astute financial modeler, PhD type of person at the bank. Said that's exactly my problem with trading, with trading decisions. What you're doing to do strategy and yellow flag prediction and predicting slip angles and whatever is exactly like predicting market conditions with constraints. So it's very interesting, and I made this comment on the call. It's very horizontal in its applicability. The maths are not different so much from what you do in time series and racing than what you do in time series in market predictions and insurance and in automotive OEMs. So it may seem very disparate, but at a mathematical level, it really isn't. The models that you're using, the base, our orchestra system is the same. Some of the mathematical models themselves that we use to build a racing application or a banking application or automotive application fundamentally are the same code. You have to change the variables, and what the variables are change. Racetrack times versus market numbers, or numbers of employees may be a variable on an optimization for scheduling. But the maths that you use to describe those things and to do the predictions are all the same. And the software that we've developed to do that model development lifecycle, where we look at the problem, develop a model, refine the model, benchmark that model against the next best solution, and then deploy that model in practice, whether it be on the cloud or on the edge. We have all of that same infrastructure, and the models themselves are quite similar. The maths don't change. It may seem to the consumer that, wow, racing is nothing like banking. So, wow, how do you do those disparate things? Mathematically, for us, they're the same, even though that sounds strange to the average person, right? But the optimizations that you're doing for scheduling are the same optimization mathematics that you would use in the D-Wave example on the router for network traffic.
Yeah, I get that. So how about if we could talk a little bit about the sort of the pipeline? I think the 30 million was the first time I've heard you really talk in any detail about the pipeline.
Yeah,
I wonder
yeah,
if you could help us understand, because you must have a sort of a funnel that leads to the pipeline of sort of less qualified people you're talking to, and then you're going to have this pipeline at 30 million, and eventually that's going to turn into bookings, and then those bookings are going to turn into revenue. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, and perhaps when you do get revenue, is it you sign a contract? Is it 1 year, 5 years, and is the revenue repeatable from then on, or is it just a fixed price for the job? I wonder if you could just go through that for us.
Yeah, I think some of our contracts are available for the public in the S4 filing that we made when in the process of going public. So you can look at the BP deal, for example, or the Andretti deal, because it was a related party, and you can see quite clearly what our business model is, which is no different in a lot of ways than what Palantir do and C3. Actually, our GC now is the former GC of C3 AI. So he was obviously was able to due diligence what our business model looked like and what our contracts looked like, and it didn't look very, very different. So we know that because some of the contracts are defense contracts that are publicly available for C3 and Palantir. So you can see this is not something where we're developing something brand new as far as a business model or approach or whatever. We meet those customers. I described it in yesterday's earnings call. Those are the folks that we're meeting in the lobby, right? Competing for the same customers. So And very much with the same approach. We, intentionally, we're not inventive on let's do something completely new on the business model, because that's not usually successful. Enterprises generally purchase things a certain way, and the procurement department at Nissan is not that different from the procurement department somewhere else at the ASF or other people that we've dealt with. So they know how to purchase AI services in a subscription-based model. Now, you can call that software as a service. It is, in a sense, but in the business model sense of that. In other words, it's ratably recognizable revenue that's repeated and done as a stand-ready basis, whether that be the software itself and the services. It's usually combined. It used to be in the box software world that you'd buy the software and you'd buy a service contract for that. Now, what we tend to do is offer the services, which may include some customization or development services with the software. And generally, with now the advent of cloud and things like that, we're just okay, monthly subscription or quarterly subscription or that kind of thing. And that's how we're doing this. So it's a subscription. It's usually a multi-year contract. 2 to 3 years is usually the contract term that we start with. And then these are we recognize the revenue ratably across that period monthly. Yeah. So that's
and then
really
in terms of capacity, I mean, we spoke last time about your sort of mathematicians inside the building, if you like, or inside the company. They must, when a company's new to you, a customer's new, it must take up quite a lot of time of those experienced guys, quite a lot of their time. And then I guess when that thing is more deployed, the time will go down a little bit. And is that kind of where the capacity is? Is that the bottleneck in the system, you think, or not?
It's not been generally a bottleneck. I mean, we've been able to add those resources as we've needed to grow. But the good thing is they're leverageable across these things, and it's not like you're using one team for 5 customers. That's really not how it works. And we've had the benefit of doing this for 7 years now, so we have a bunch of libraries and software that we bring to that problem. So we're highly leveraged. I think probably just because technology has developed on how to develop models in these things over the years since Palantir started 20 years ago or so, compared to a Palantir or a C3, we have a modern technology stack, which means that we have a higher leveraged ability to develop the models, deploy the models, and deliver the models with a lower resource constraint, to your point. So we have a lot of software that helps us do that with fewer resources, but there is some resource at the front end, and there are fewer of those resources necessary when we get into more of a support mode. So when we're developing the model, when we're working with the customers, a lot of times they haven't done an AI version of whatever that problem is yet. We need to be there to be the maths experts to be helping them develop that framework and work with them to develop, benchmark, and deploy the model. So we do need some services that are high touch there. We embed them generally with the client, 3 or 4 people at the end-ready track every week, doing the math with them, with the domain experts in racing, when they're not racing experts. Whatever. But is some of these models, use these models and even redeploy them on their own, and we can step back a bit, and therefore the resource constraints and gating items tend to ameliorate over time. However, then hopefully there's a new use case to be developed, another use case to be developed, and we'll redeploy those services with some upsell. As you've seen, we expanded the Andretti relationship out of 7-figure amount to go do other work. So it's not like we'll just stay there and step back and then do that. We'll then redeploy and reinvest in the relationship so that we can have a broader use case portfolio in the same thing. So it's a land and expand type of a business model.
It seems unusual as well, because the more customers you have seems to increase your capacity, whereas normally it's the other way around, isn't it? Because every time you get a new customer and you build a library, that speeds up your future deployment of things. It's kind of the opposite to how most people see this, I think.
Yeah, and absolutely, and you can see that reflected in the financials. As we progressed to a more software deliverable model, as some of our customers have progressed in this cycle, you saw the gross margin increase. And
Significantly as
now,
well, yeah.
now I want to pre-warn everyone that that's an investment cycle. If you want us to grow as a company and have more revenues, then we have to repeat that cycle, and that will be a bit jagged. I do want to, forewarn everyone that, oh, you'll be consistently up, 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 up. No, because you want to reinvest, expand that, meaning you go back to the original cycle, but then the eventual goal is that all of these accounts, a large portion of them, will be at a high gross margin rate over time.
Yeah, so if we talk about the finances for a little bit, that would be great. I mean, I've been trying to build a mathematical model of Zapata, but it's extraordinarily difficult when companies are such early stage. But the revenue of 2 million last quarter, that's a really big jump. Really, that's really positive. I've got booked in about 6.3 million for the year. I hope that's somewhere near right. And then I've got you growing at more than 100% a year for the next 2 or 3 years. I see sort of almost a kind of hockey stick forecasting for a little while. And then the only thing I mean, I'd like your comments on those, see if I'm somewhere near. But then also on cash needs.
Yeah. Well, first let me caveat that we won't give guidance, because
No.
we're not going to do that yet. But yeah.
Okay. Perhaps we could show. I mean, I don't know if you can. You may not be able to help me with this one either, if we're not going to get this. But I've got cash needs at somewhere 75 to 95 million over the upcoming period, and the ELOC in place looks to me to be about sufficient to cover that. Is that something you can comment on?
I don't know if you look at some of the fairness opinion projections, which we won't stand by, and that's all caveated away, but you can give a guide to, you can look through the S4 and see some of our thinking. Those have to be modified as we develop, and those are stale at this point. So, yeah, I don't know if it's even that capital intensive. Let me just put it that way. I don't want to overestimate here on a call and say that, okay, it's this amount that we need, but I think you're being quite conservative there on what we would need. And then there's a balance to that, right? Do you want to grow, or do you want to reach EBITDA positive performance quickly? And in some way, that's very market dependent. Unfortunately, it's like, okay, what does the market want right now? Oh, we're rewarding growth. No, we don't care about market share and eventually being large. We don't want to be risk capital. We want our EBITDA now. But in a technology company, I don't know that investors really want me to be generating a company that would prematurely not grow and not take market share. I don't know if that's really the reward if people are looking for a dividend, like a blue chip dividend in technology immediately, right? So I don't know that that's the case. I would hope that that's not the case. This is a different market cycle that we're in right now, and investors have scaled back from their desire to seek growth, right? And that's been difficult for the earlier stage of technology, when you may want to be in a growth mode. Now, growing cost is not the point, right? I've seen that in the AI sector, and I've been quite skeptical about this. I think you may have seen some of these reports. That's definitely not our goal. Growing just head counts and revenues at a negative gross margin, that's not good for anybody. That's a poor decision. That's a poor operating decision, and I think that there will be some consequences for companies that have gone down that road. Having said that, okay, how do we reasonably and responsibly deploy dilutive growth capital, right? To grow the business so that the shareholders at the end are getting a share of a larger pie. That's really the equation that we're trying to aim for here, because we do want to be able to compete with the Palantirs of the world and other folks who are already at an enviable cash position, right? And so we have to punch above our weight, but being much more conservative on our cash expenditures to do that. So it's mitigating that balance. So I think we want to be careful on our costs. We want to be careful on diluting shareholders to the extent that we can, within the context also of, okay, is there a bigger pie out there to be had, and therefore, can we responsibly uh, uh, um, take on enough cash to grow and to compete in the sector. The good news is you're seeing the gross margin growth here. It's not like it's a negative growth margin infrastructure capex play. Really, what you see is our growth is in people and the people necessary to deploy and pre-deploy ahead of that pipeline turning into bookings, turning into rearview mirror revenues. But that's also why we wanted to bring the bookings thing out, because I think it's a more important moniker for judging, for allowing analysts such as yourself and others to really forecast, okay, where could this turn into? You can put a reasonable discount factor on that. You could put an unreasonable discount factor on that, even, and still end up with, as you've seen in the benchmark and the other reports, a price target that's higher than where we are by a significant amount.
I think most of the retail investors um, we accept dilution because that's kind of the whole point of you coming to the market. If you didn't want to sell shares and raise money, you wouldn't have come to the market in the first place. So we kind of are less negative about that as some of the big investment banks might be, because I guess we don't have the same amount of cash in there as they do. But also it's kind of the whole point. We wouldn't be able to buy part of Zapata if they didn't want to raise money. So
Exactly. And that's why we've been able to have a good portion of our ownership be transferred into the retail sector. That's the opportunity. Now, you might say, well, okay, then should it be public, private, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, yeah, okay. But a lot of these AI opportunities are happening on the private side, which means that it's only the connected people who can get in and be a partner in A16Z who are going to even be able to participate in this sector of the market. So in some ways, I see this as an opportunity, given the right constraints for retail investors to really play in a pure play AI opportunity.
yeah, on one just while we're on shares and things, I saw
Yeah.
the two Nasdaq listing letters, one on market cap, one on share price. Have you got any plans to deal with that, or are you just going to allow it to come off the Nasdaq? I mean, I
Oh
don't
no,
have.
I mean the plan certainly wouldn't be to go off the Nasdaq as a business plan. We've seen these things. I think over time, there's time on that, and there are also possible extension periods as well that you can apply for. So the goal would be to cure that over time. We're hoping that the stock price will respond. I mean, when you have price targets from two reputable analysts out there saying that it should be not where it is, that this is a bargain. We're hoping that some of what we do and continuing to show positive financial results will help and positive wins on the revenue side in announced deals that will help cure that problem. That's really the plan.
Okay, that's great. I mean, I noticed we're coming to the end of time, unfortunately, Christopher. It's been a really good chat again. Really enjoyed it. And I must
And I
say,
would recommend maybe you have also a discussion if you want to play with modeling types of discussions or whatnot, that kind of a thing. Summit would be a great resource to talk about that. And you can do that without crossing the line and
okay.
subjecting you to MNPI or anything like that. He's been quite good at that, and he's had those analyst discussions with obviously the two analysts who've started coverage and others right now. So we're very willing to do that.
Yeah, I'll reach out
Unfortunately,
to him. Yeah.
we didn't have him on this call. The day after the 10Q is generally interesting. Oh, now back to work
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
for the CFO.
Must be
But on
crazy,
the next
especially.
call, yeah, I'd love to introduce him and have him as another resource for you.
I just well, you mentioned the 10Q. I think. I mean, I just noticed when I was looking on Seeking Alpha that there's on the balance sheet appears not to be correctly sort of accounted for. Well, the figures don't look right. It says 7.16 when I think it should be. It says 7.16 measured in thousands. I think it should either be 7.16 measured in millions, or it should be
Yes.
7,000.
Yeah. So yeah, there was a little bit of a slip in the language there.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because those things go through so much checking, so many people read them, and it goes and like and they just slip through all the time. It's crazy, isn't it? Really, I don't know how it happens.
And you cannot see everything before
No,
it goes out. Luckily, it's not material. It's like,
no,
okay,
no.
someone like yourself can figure it out. It's like, oh
Oh
no,
yeah.
that's clearly not it, because the other ones are in millions. So how can that be in thousands? But and the earnings release was correct,
Well, everything's
and
correct because nothing follows through. There's no like,
yeah,
sometimes you see an error and it gets pulled all the way through, but it doesn't at all. It's just like it's just got it's either
yeah.
in millions or there's 3 zeros missing over. It's pretty obvious, but
I hate that when people bring it up though, because you are responsible for it. And it just doesn't look great when you have all of Deloitte auditing it. You have CFGI behind the scenes doing some of our back office. These are professionals. These are some of the
yeah,
top CPAs
yeah,
in the
it's
world,
crazy.
and two law firms looking at it, our internal counsel, me, Sumit, our FP&A people, everyone. You're right. There's an army.
Yeah, it's
But
crazy.
you know what happens? It's like even on press releases and these kind of things, you have an army of marketing people, but they've read it 100 times. And when you've read it 100 times, you're like, oh, I know that already, and you
Yeah.
don't,
So your mind
don't look
sees what you think's there. It doesn't see what's actually there. That's what
exactly,
happens. Yeah.
exactly. It's like it takes a third party to say, aha, you missed that, which we appreciate and we want to get it right. I mean, I'm a perfectionist, so I hate when I hear that. So my apologies, and we'll do better.
No, no reason to apologise. Just in case. I mean, obviously you have that, so it doesn't matter. I think that's everything I want to say, Christopher. I mean, you've been really great again, really helpful. I'm sure that the retail crowd are really enjoying it, and I do know that with quite a lot of people read that article. There's nobody that I'm in contact with is kind of giving up on Zapata in any way, even though we had that huge share price drop. It's like people
Yeah,
saying, well,
that's
it's
that's the and I
that's
can
the
say,
market.
that's when you're at this level of market cap that some participants who can come in are not long. Everyone's not long, and that's kind of the thing you have to deal with. I think longer term, you get more of institutional buy-in, long only buy-in, and this kind of thing. And in some ways, I hope that volatility dissipates, and over time, it's about the business and the fundamentals and fundamental investors. You're going to get some day trading. You're going to get some of that at this end of the market and this end of the early cycle. And it's not like Nvidia didn't have it either.
No,
Uh, so but that's the good and the bad of it. But having the volume, having eyeballs on there, having a 27 million share a day means that people are watching when there's activity, when there's news, which is better than the alternative, the way I see it.
absolutely. Great. All right. Unless there's anything else you'd like to say, Christopher, we'll wrap it up there. Great
Yep.
chat again. Is there anything else you want to mention to everybody?
No, just that yeah, watch this space. We're really excited, as I mentioned, about the defense stuff, because it's a longer sales cycle on these things, but it's incredibly sticky and incredibly important, I think, to be involved in that. And I'm really excited that we can deploy some of the commercial stuff that we're doing in defense.
In many
It's
respects,
really
the
exciting.
defense side is the most obvious of those follow through things, isn't it? You're kind of going through DARPA into the special forces, into NATO, into this, and it's like
Yeah,
it's an obvious way through. And the defense is the one where it's more important that you've already been successful with one of their family, if you like, or one of the people involved than anything else.
absolutely.
You know, and it's
Absolutely. And having done the DARPA project and delivered successfully, and you get a rating by the agencies, and having that rating follows you. And so it's quite clear that we've had, success in delivery, and that does help us on the next one, the next one, the next one. Same for a Palantir, same for a C3. So we're kind of doing these things on the shoulders of giants who've already gone this route. And hopefully this is very synergistic. What we learn in doing the defense things, not everything will be transferred and unapplicable in autonomous driving and other areas. So synergistic as a business for us.
all right. I've run over a little bit,
Yeah.
Christopher. I really thank you for your time again.
Yeah.
Thank you to the people involved,
Thank
Matthew,
you so
Devon,
much.
Kerry, even though I didn't hear
Appreciate it,
from you.
Steve.
Thanks.